The Somali-American story begins long before the mass resettlement of the 1990s. To find the true first chapter of Somali-American history, we sail back to the late 19th and early 20th centuries, an era of steamships, empires, and global migration. Along the northern coast of Somalia, in port cities like Berbera and Zayla, Somali men had spent generations navigating the winds of the Indian Ocean. When the British Empire expanded its merchant fleet, it turned to Somaliland for skilled maritime labor. Somalis were known as tough, disciplined seamen. British shipping lines, P&O, British India Steam Navigation, actively recruited them as stokers, firemen, and deckhands. Their endurance in the brutal heat of coal-fired engine rooms was legendary. These sailors, labeled lascars under colonial terminology, traveled across the world. Many eventually stepped onto American shores, New York, Boston, Baltimore, and even ports around the Great Lakes. These were the first Somalis ever documented in the United States. By the 1910s and 1920s, small numbers of Somali seamen began appearing in U.S. ports. Some were discharged there. Others simply chose to stay, seeking better work on land. But America was a different world, defined by strict racial boundaries and exclusion laws like the 1917 Immigration Act. Somalis didn't fit neatly into America's racial boxes. Depending on the clerk or the port, they were labeled Asian, African, Arab, or sometimes just other. It placed them in a strange legal limbo, and socially they were nearly invisible. Work was scarce, but they pushed forward. Some became cooks or factory workers. Others found familiar labor in boiler rooms and power plants. The community remained small, dozens, maybe a few hundred nationwide, and overwhelmingly male. They built lives quietly, anonymously, but their presence marked the very first Somali footprint in America. One city in particular became a magnet: Detroit. In the 1920s, Henry Ford's famous $5 a day wage drew workers from around the world, and Ford, unusually for the era, prided himself on hiring men from every background. Somali workers settled in Black Bottom, a predominantly black neighborhood that also housed other immigrant groups. Some attended Ford's English school, part of an early assimilation program. Because there were no Somali women in America yet, many married African-American women, and their descendants blended into the broader story of the Great Migration. Much of this early Somali presence faded from memory, until historians began to recover it decades later. A second wave of early Somali arrivals looked very different. In the 1950s and 1960s, as Somalia approached independence, the new nation sent promising young scholars to study in the United States. These students were future leaders, engineers, administrators, agronomists. Their mission was clear: learn abroad, then return home to help build the Somali state. They lived in dorms, joined campus clubs, attended lectures, and carried enormous pressure. Nearly all intended to return home, and most did. Their time in America laid the foundation for an early intellectual bridge between the two countries, one that would later be fractured by the Civil War. The seamen of the 1910s and the students of the 1960s were small in number, but their impact was foundational. They navigated immigration laws, racial barriers, isolation, and uncertainty, and carved out the very first Somali presence in the United States. By the 1970s, a slow trickle of immigrants arrived, often relatives of those early pioneers. But everything changed after the Somali Civil War erupted in 1991. Tens of thousands of Somali refugees were resettled across America, forming the vibrant communities they are recognized today in Minnesota, Ohio, Washington State, California, and beyond. Most new arrivals didn't know it, but when they reached Detroit, New York, or Boston, they were stepping into cities where Somali footprints already existed, some for more than half a century. From the Horn of Africa to the American heartland, The Somali journey to the United States is not a sudden story. It is a century-long odyssey, one shaped by courage, curiosity, and a community that grew from a handful of pioneers into a powerful and enduring American presence.